Takemichi tells Nodo to look into the day Ken died, as it was Kazaki who turned Tomen evil. Takemichi then decides to save everyone. Nodo reads the news. Reports on Ken death on August 3, 2005. He and other 50 people were in a biker gang fight, and he ended up being stabbed and died. The reason for the fight was in a strife between Mikey and Ken's faction. Takemichi finds it hard to believe that Ken understands Mikey more than anyone else. Hearing that, Nodo guesses there is likely more to it. He states that Takemichi's current mission is to save Ken, which will result in Mikey not changing his mind and not dying. As they agree on the mission, Takemichi and Nodo shake hands. Takemichi opens his eyes to find himself in a karaoke room with a half-naked girl on him. As the room phone rings and Emma picks it up, Takemichi runs, shocked. Later, Ken calls Takemichi and tells him to come to Musashi Shrine as they are gathering there, and Hinata decides to go with Takemichi. As they arrive at the shrine, they see multiple people with bikes, and two start yelling at Takemichi to leave. As Tomen is gathering Takashi, the 2nd Division captain takes them to Mikey, who was glad that Takemichi came. Ken comments he shouldn't have taken Hinata with him, but Takemichi explains he didn't know it was this kind of gathering, and then calls Emma and tells her to protect Hinata as she is Takemichi's girlfriend. Emma tells Hinata that she is interested in Takemichi. She tried to seduce Takemichi, hoping Ken would get at least a bit angry, but he only cares about Mikey bikes. And fighting a meeting of Tomen starts in. Mikey wants to know the gang's opinion on the conflict with Moebius. Poor and Pain push Takemichi, who is angry for what happened with Masataka. Takashi explains that Moebius leader Osanai messed with Poor Bud for something stupid. Osanai beat up his friend, raped his girlfriend in front of him, took his money, and beat up his parents and siblings to get Takashi. Explains that Tomen run Shibuya while Moebius Shinjuku. Mikey asked Poor what he wanted to do. Poor is aware that if they fight, Tomen won't go unscathed, but he is really pissed and wants to fight and kill them. Mikey then yells that they are going to crush Moebius. On August 3rd, during the Musashi festival, Takemichi thinks about the situation. He knows from Nodo that on August 3rd Ken dies during internal conflict and Tomen, but now on 3rd they are going to fight Moebius. Unable to think of anything, Takemichi decides to be Ken's bodyguard. The next day, Ken declines Takemichi's offer, wanting to know more about Moebius, and returns to the present. He tells Nodo that he doesn't believe Mikey, and Ken would end up in a conflict and ask him to track Osanai in order to ask him what happened between Tomen and Moebius. Osanai initially refused to talk about Tomen's fight. However, he denies Noda's accusations that he ordered Ken's death. Osanai reveals that they didn't kill Ken, but the incident was a trigger that led to Tomen's internal conflicts, and all of this was planned by someone. Nodo believes Osanai, as he looked quite shaken, and realizes that someone used Osanai and wished to split Tomen. Takemichi then returns to the past in order to warn Mikey. Takemichi woke up on a bike with Akkun and is happy that Akkun is still alive. He asked him if he had any dreams, and Akkun revealed that he dreams of becoming a hairstylist. Takemichi then leaves and goes to Mikey. Takemichi asks Mikey to call off the fight, with Moebius stating that someone is plotting it. They can't tell them how he knows. Poor then pushes Takemichi aside, warning him that he will kill him if he says anything else. Mikey states that they are going to fight Moebius, as he has already made up his mind. Takemichi states he won't back down, and Ken stops Poor from saying that. Maybe they need to look more into Moebius Mikey before wondering if Ken is against Tomen. Osanai then shows up and states they should respect him as he's 2 years older, which makes Pot angry, and he rushes at him, but Osanai knocks him down with a punch and jokes that they need to rename it Middle School Baby Alliance. Osanai comments that he heard they're picking a fight with them, and that he decided to bring the fight to them, and calls the rest of the Moebius who surround the Tomen and member looking at Osanai. Takemichi can't believe this is the same person he met in the present. Osanai then hit Takemichi, as he felt he was looking down on him. Poor then interferes and wishes to fight Osanai and Mikey. Tell the rest to just watch Osanai take on his Poor and easily beat him. Poor apologizes to Mikey for being worthless, but Mikey says he didn't lose. While Moebius members mock Mikey and the rest, he approaches Osanai and knocks him out with a single kick.
I'll have you laid out in 10 seconds!
Hey, any of you who thought Paul lost, come on out here. I'll murder you all. Tomon belongs to me. As long as I have its back, none of us are ever gonna lose.
Osanai manages to get up and take a broken bottle, but as he rushes towards Mikey, Ken manages to easily stop him. Ken then announces that Moebius will be under the Tokyo Manji Gang as they hear the police approaching. Everyone runs. Takemichi recalls Osanai's words that this was the trigger, but is surprised everything ended so peacefully and wonders if he is missing something. In that moment, Pah stabs Osanai in the back, which shocks everyone. Pah apologizes to Mikey and tells them to run as he intends to turn himself in. While running, Takemichi loses consciousness. Takemichi wakes up in the hospital with Emma next to him. He wonders about Mikey and Ken, and while crying, Emma explains that they ended up fighting due to Pah and Tomon and are now divided into the manager's faction and the Ken faction. Takemichi spends 3 days at home. His friends visit him and tell him that Tomon is in a bad situation and is likely to split, but then they start laughing and explain that Ken and Mikey fight often. In that moment, Ken shows up, brings watermelon, and shocks everyone as they eat it. Ken tells them that power will be held for a year and that Osanai is alive. Ken leaves Takemichi home. He sees Mikey in front and both wonder what the other one is doing there. Both state they are there to see Takemichi, who's their friend. As they continue to argue, Takemichi tries to stop them, which annoys Ken. Mikey then takes Takemichi's bike and throws it at Ken, who dodges, and the bike breaks on the wall. Takemichi gets angry at Mikey and Ken for breaking his stuff and yells at them to stop. As Takemichi tries to punch Mikey, he dodges, and Takemichi falls into the trash can. Mikey apologizes and asks Takemichi to calm down. Takemichi explains that they don't care about those around them, and their fight will split Tomon. Mikey informs Takemichi that he has shit on his head, and then runs away with Ken as Takemichi stinks. A bit later, after Takemichi washes his hair, he joins Mikey and Ken, who have made up and apologized for their behavior. Mikey says you forgot about what they even fought about, but Takemichi guesses it's due to Pah, as even though he was guilty, Mikey still wanted to help him, while Ken wanted to honor Pah's resolve. With Mikey and Ken no longer fighting, Takemichi realizes he changed history, and Ken will die on August 3rd. Kokomami, Hinata, Emma, and Ken go to the festival together as it starts to rain. Takemichi and Hinata run to hide under a tree. Hinata loses her balance, but Takemichi manages to catch her. While staying together, Takemichi realizes it's a good moment for a kiss and attempts to kiss her, but his phone rings. Yamagishi tells him to warn Ken to watch his back, as he heard that some that support Mikey want to kill Ken, and even though Ken and Mikey are good now, Takemichi hangs up the phone and apologizes to him. Takemichi asks her to wait for him. He goes around looking for Ken, but finds some of Tomon's members, including the Moebius guy who gives Masataka a blade, and Masataka states that he will kill Ken. One of Masataka's guys finds Takemichi and brings him to him. After beating him up, Masataka ties Takemichi with duct tape and leaves him. Some moments later, Hinata finds Takemichi tied up and removes the duct tape from his mouth. Takemichi starts crying, stating that he tried his best, but in the end, he couldn't save anyone. If he was like Mikey or Ken, he could have beaten them, but as he was worthless, he couldn't do anything. And Hinata then kisses him, saying it was her first kiss and she gave it to him because he was special to her. Hinata then frees Takemichi, and he decides to go and stop Masataka. Takemichi encounters Takashi, who informs him that Ken will be attacked. However, Takashi already knows what's surprising. It's Masataka and not Pan. Takashi states that everyone came to an agreement, but they couldn't do anything about Pah except Pan him. Elsewhere, Pan finds Ken and Emma. While looking for Ken, Takashi explains that Pain believes Tomon abandoned Paw and teamed up with some Moebius members to take out Ken. Seeing Pan, Ken knows that he isn't happy with what happened and prepares to fight him, but suddenly a Moebius member attacks him with a bat from behind. Takemichi recalls Noda's words about Ken's incident happening on a parking lot and heads towards the parking lot. They find Ken fighting numerous Moebius members as he is getting tired.
Half of Moebius is here.
Hey, come on!
Draken!
Hey, Mitsuya. Takemichi.
Draken, are you alright?
He sits on the ground and tells Takashi that he leaves things to him.
Take you